those who have been to a ruined wedding, what happened? The bride's father was 45 minutes late to walk his daughter down the aisle. While we were waiting, the air conditioning broke in the venue. It was over 100 degrees outside and humid. The place was overcrowded. You could barely move without bumping into someone else. And in the heat, that was extra miserable. I guess the air conditioning problem had also affected the refrigerator or something, because most of the food was spoiled. The only food on the buffet was salad, spaghetti, and rolls. Not enough to feed even half the guests. Most people left after the first dance. Two of the bride's aunts fainted. The bride and the wedding planner were crying. When the wedding planner is also crying, you know the day was spiraled out of control. I feel bad for laughing, but man, that's so true. I'd say that's a rare occasion for a wedding planner. Groom got so drunk the night before he couldn't make it to the altar at the ceremony. They still had the ceremony with only the bride and her party, plus one of the groomsmen who apparently didn't get wasted. Everyone there was shaking their heads the entire time. The groom did make one singular appearance for a few seconds at the reception. He looked like a zombie and was wearing street clothes. And this was not trashy wedding. The bride was a professional dancer for a major label pop star. So that gives you an idea of the type of people that were in the attendance. 200 plus people at the ceremony alone, probably double that at the reception. They divorced within 6 months. I was studying photography and used to act as an assistant to a well-known wedding photographer. Went to a couple's wedding. He shot digital and I shot black and white film. Spent all day with the couple from 9 a.m. through till 2 a.m. the next morning when we left. I could see how genuinely in love they were. It was only a day, but I got to know them quite well and really liked them both. The next morning, I get a call from the photographer and his voice was shaky. He explained that the groom passed away because of the criminal activity that night after the reception party. The guys had broken into their bungalow to steal wedding gifts. The groom got out of bed to stop them, and they executed him in front of the bride. I was in shock for about 2 weeks. This story was in South Africa, if that helps explain how or why this happened. The next weekend, the photographer and I went to the bride's house to present her with the photos. We'd worked together to get the job massively accelerated, so she had the photos of her husband. We did it at our own expense and didn't charge her a penny for the day or all the prints and album, sort of the least we could do. Because my photos didn't matter as much, I'd been able to simply capture those natural moments between them rather than staged wedding photos. So they had the normal album pics, but also about 150 snaps of just them being a couple. She was in tears from the moment we arrived till we left a few hours later. She was a shadow of the woman I'd met only a week earlier. That event still haunts me. Edit: I didn't expect this story to get the attention it has. I'm sorry for any upset this has caused anyone reading this, but I believe it's an important reality check. I loved South Africa in a lot of ways, but it's a very troubled place with insane criminal rates and other rates. My story is by no means unique or even particularly shocking by South African standards. I also have worse stories like these from friends and neighbors. I have CPTSD from my time living there and the things I'd endured. I've got friends who were diagnosed with PTSD stemming from their time there too. I hope this dissuades a few people from visiting South Africa, and in doing so perhaps I save. I am a wedding photographer. I was at one really fancy one a couple of years ago. Typical outdoor deal at a swanky location in the middle of nowhere. The place was really nice. He had a large concrete stairway flanked by water fountains that led down to the altar area, so the bride could be seen by all like she was ascending from heaven. The ceremony begins and the bridal party come down and take their places. Then the bride appears with notice her father. She takes 3 or 4 steps down the concrete steps and her shoe twists on her. She tumbled down a good 12 feet or more and busted out the majority of her front teeth in the fall. So much blood all over her. With the place being so isolated, it took a good 40 minutes for ambulance to arrive and she was in intense pain. Ultimately, she was okay, and I got an email from them weeks later with the rescheduled date. This time, there was no stairs anywhere in sight. The wedding was at a state park that is famous for its giant waterfall. I don't know whose idea this was, but someone suggested a photo overlooking this gorge, and everybody was game. The wedding party went around a stone security barrier, and the maid of honor literally fell off the cliff to her death. It was like 500 plus feet. I've been catered many weddings, and there have been some memorable ones. Fights between guests, wedding cakes falling over, red wine spilled on wedding dresses, there are a lot. The one I'll never forget, an all-day do, small ceremony, a few close friends and family, and a big reception filled with a huge buffet, every type of food you could imagine, and a free bar. All in the same venue. They have booked and paid for 250 evening guests, but 30 guests turned up at most. My heart broke for this couple. A massive, beautiful converted barn, lots of food and drinks, great music, but no guests. At about 10 p.m., the venue was licensed until 11 p.m. The buffet food had barely been touched. The few who were there ate, but it hardly made a dent as it was planned for so many more people. I asked the mother of the bride if she wanted me to cover and refrigerate the untouched food so the new couple could take it home, and her response of, "Oh no, there is still a lot of people coming," was the most awkward I've ever felt in my life. No more guests showed. There was a flash of car headlight in the distance about 10:30 p.m. and the bride beamed when she thought it was latecomers arriving. But no, it was just taxis arriving to pick up the few who were there. It's the only event I have ever done where we didn't have to kick people out of the venue. At 11 p.m. the place was empty. In a nutshell, bride's parents paid for the day and the happy couple had zero control over the guest list. Her parents invited all their friends to the evening function, but in reality it was just associates they wanted to flex on, resulting in no one giving a about an invite to a wedding where they didn't know the bride or groom. It was basically just a networking event for the bride's parents. Edit for those asking. I believe the guests did respond if it pleased you, but instead of handful of guests thinking, "Oh, we don't know them," they won't notice we're not there. It was the majority of them. I played a wedding where, as we started playing the set, everyone ran outside and nobody was to be seen for the rest of the night. I originally assumed it was because nobody liked us, but the bride came in afterwards and said there was a huge fight involving multiple members of both families, and everyone basically went home upset, injured, or in a police van. We couldn't stop playing since we were played and it was our job, and the only person watching was the drunk uncle dancing on his own, asking for requests we didn't know. When I was 6 or 7, I went to a cousin's wedding. Everything was fabulous for little me. So much sugar everywhere, basically heaven. The reception was in a big community center that was reserved for the occasion. Went to the girls' bathroom, passing by the men's room to see my uncle on the floor. Went back to the main room to tell my dad my uncle was looking weird. Well, uncle had a stroke and had died. The bride spent the rest of the afternoon crying, and everyone except close family left. Bad side is the marriage is still going strong 20 years later, despite what happened that day. Attended a wedding reception and was seated near the cameraman. An aunt of mine was sitting closer to the camera and spent the evening commenting and gossiping about everyone, and much of it came out on the video. The cameraman was great. He did 2 copies, one edited and the other no holds barred. The unedited version is the stuff of legend. Bonus DVD feature: Director's Commentary. best friend's mom got remarried and had an expensive, beautiful wedding, but for some reason didn't hire a DJ. Last minute, her mom asked me to manage the CD and gave me a list along with verbal instructions of when to play each. I tried to warn her that I simply did not follow, but she told me she had confidence in me. Apparently, all her life she wanted to walk down the aisle to some specific song, but I just couldn't figure it out. They had to get walking to match the sunset, so she went ahead down the aisle while I flipped through a series of incorrect songs to the horror amusement of the crowd. For years after, when I called my friend's house and her stepdad answered, he'd say, "Is this the guy who act up my wedding? How are you?" This was one I worked at. After the ceremony, right at the start of the reception, photographer was taking jumping photos of the bride and bridesmaids. So they were all jumping in the air while wearing heels. The bride landed and dislocated her knee, then passed out and kept going in and out of consciousness. We called an ambulance who turned up and fixed her knee, etc. She then had the first course of the meal and threw up down her dress and had to sit with her mom in another room while everyone else danced, etc. Felt so bad for her as she spent the rest of the evening crying. A co-worker was at one of the best friends' wedding. There were very specific rules about the food. No nuts. There were a couple people there, including the maid of honor, who were severely allergic. The venue served something that had nuts. Maid of honor went anaphylactic. EpiPen was not effective, and she died on the way to the hospital. Needless to say, there are lawsuits abound. My mother was a church organist and attended many weddings. I suppose the story that stands out was of the bride who, when asked, "Do you take this man?" broke down and said, "No, I can't, I don't love him," and ran out of the church. It was a smallish town. People find out that she had met somebody new, fallen hopelessly in love with him. Did she marry the new guy? She did, and the old boyfriend came to the wedding. He actually took it far better than we would have thought. According to mutual friends, his attitude was, "That was pretty crap." But at least we didn't go through with it, and it all go wrong later. Bride and groom decided to go get a few pictures right after the ceremony. They disappeared for about 5 hours. We all waited at the venue. Since no one got any word from them, the buffet wasn't set and the DJ didn't play any music. After 2 hours, most guests decided to collect some cash, and we talked the manager of the venue to get out the buffet and the DJ to play music. So we basically started the party without the wedding couple. When they finally got back, they were in shock because basically all food was gone. People were drunken and happily dancing, and everybody forgot that this was their wedding. So the wedding itself wasn't ruined, but everything around it, well, as guests, had a great time after all when we took things in our own hands. Update, since everyone is asking, they actually took pictures during that time. The photographer did his best, but the couple wasn't that good looking, but pretty vain, and thought the photo guy could simply work some voodoo magic on the spot to make them look good. He was pissed to say the least and actually tried to talk them into going back. This didn't happen at the wedding, but at a 30-year wedding anniversary. I was working as a waiter at an inn. We had ballrooms for private parties and other bigger events. The bride and groom had spared no expense. About a 100 guests, 5-course meal, an open bar, a whole day party. We were supposed to close it at 4 in the morning. It was grand and one of the biggest parties I had waited on so far. After the main course, the husband stood up and held a speech, a long one. He started out reminiscing of when they had met, their early life together, the hard times they had endured. He then talked at length about how he loved the children she had birthed him and told each of them how proud he was of them, their character and accomplishment. It was heartfelt. He had a lot of charisma. He was well spoken and funny. But then he turned to his wife again. He told her that he had hated her for the last 4 years of their life together, that she was a toxic narcissistic that had made him feel miserable and almost had driven him to end his life. He told her that he knew she had a lover, pointed him out in the crowd next to his wife and children. He had evidence and was suing for divorce, intending to take everything. He gave her the divorce papers right then and there. Then he announced to everyone that he had gotten his own apartment, that movers had moved all his stuff while they were at the party, and that he would be leaving shortly. But everything was already paid for, so they should stay and enjoy themselves. In the stunned silence that ensued, he tipped all staff, dishwashers, bosses, waiters, and busboys $200 each and left. Needless to say, all except family had left the party within the hour. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and see you in the next video.